Yo guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about how to get the absolute best quality out of the Panasonic GX80. I absolutely adore this camera. It's very small. I love it because of its in-body stabilization, because of its 4K, because you can adopt vintage lenses to it, and the size. You can take it really anywhere you want to. But how to get the best settings and this kind of quality of video. Let's start off by looking at the picture profile. Now, if I go into the menu settings, the first tab is the photo style. I shoot everything on the natural picture profile. However, I turn contrast all the way to -5. I leave sharpness at the way it is. I don't touch that because I find that peaking actually works a little bit worse when you start fiddling with sharpness, and I think that sharpness actually looks okay in this camera. Noise reduction, I also don't touch that. And then saturation, I put it all the way at -5 as well. I'm basically trying to get the flattest look possible out of the camera, and I then do a lot of color grading and post-production after I have finished my my video. Right, filter settings is off. 4K live cropping, I use that sometimes in a pinch, but I don't use that most of the time. I kind of use this feature in post-production as well. Snap movie is off. Recording, now this is interesting. I record everything, almost everything, 99% of my video is in AVC HD in 1080p. The reason for that is because I actually found that AVC HD somehow is a better quality file. It grades a little bit better, and there's less banding and less pixelation after I apply the color grade. I'm not sure how that works specifically, but I've just noticed that when I used to film in MP4 versus AVC HD, AVC HD has actually worked better for me. Now, as I said, 90% of the time I'm in 24 megabytes 24p, and that's the setting that I usually use. Exposure is set to manual, so I can see the changes that are happening on the screen as I am trying to expose for my subjects. Focus mode is always, well, 99% of the time is in manual focus as well. The reason for that is because Panasonic cameras unfortunately have a pretty bad autofocusing system, and it's not really something you should trust. So I just try to focus on my subjects, onto my scene before I push record, and that way I know everything is going to be in focus and there's going to be no hunting and none of that going on. Continuous autofocus kind of links up to the focus setting. Yeah, continuous autofocus just does not work in Panasonic cameras, so that's off as well. Metering mode is set to the top one. Highlight shadow. Usually I don't touch this, but sometimes if I'm in a very low light environment, I put it to lower contrast so I can get, again, slightly better dynamic range out of this camera. Eye dynamic is off, eye resolution is off. These are kind of gimmicky settings, you don't really need to touch them. Diffraction compensation is off, X teleconverter is off, digital zoom is off. I don't use any of this. Stabilization is of course on. IBIS in this camera is really good. And silent operation is also on. Now for the microphone, I don't usually vlog with this camera. I don't usually record any audio from this thing directly because there is no microphone input. But in a pinch, I do have my mic level set to the highest level, which is 4. And wind noise canceller is also on the highest setting as well. Now, this is what my basically camera looks like before I start shooting anything. I usually shoot all my videos on fast lenses, f1.7. I try not to use anything above that, because I like to film at dusk. I like to film in the earlier hours of the day when it's cloudy, when it's gloomy, and I like that to have that extra depth, and I like to have that extra capacity with the aperture in case I need it. 24p shutter speed is 50, of course. ISO for video, I try to keep it as low as possible, usually 200. Maximum I'll ever go to for ISO is 800 ISO in a very dark environment, but I try to never ever go over 800 ISO. I find that the image actually looks better and cleaner if you underexpose a little bit, and even in a dark setting you add the extra light in post-production, as opposed to putting your ISO too high. White balance is always set on manual, and again, 99% of the time I leave that on 5000 Kelvin, and I don't touch that. White balance is not a huge deal as long as it doesn't start shifting. Obviously, when I'm filming indoors with like fluorescent light, I start changing that inside the camera, but in daytime situations 5000 does the trick, and even if it's slightly off, I usually correct that in post-production as well. Now, when I look at my custom settings, I have 3 modes here. C1, which is my basic mode that I showed you guys just now, that I use pretty much most of the time. Now C2, everything is exactly the same. The only thing is that is now in slow motion. So I film in 50p and shutter is at 100, and I'll use this for slow motion if I want to capture any of that. And then the last setting is C3, the custom 3 mode, and that is basically for a 4K setting. Again, exactly the same with the white balance and the profile of the image. Just if I need, 4K in a pinch, that's what I could basically do. That's pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you find it useful. Leave a comment below to tell me what your settings are in any of your Panasonic cameras, and I'll see you guys in the next video.